we want to touch on something we've been talking about a lot this year. Colorado.
Yep.
Alex, we've seen how they've done. They surprised a lot of people with that 3-0 start, but we always knew the other shoe was going to fall. And last 2 weeks, it's gotten better, but
Yeah.
still back-to-back losses. Where do they go from here?
I mean, for me, this goes right into the path that I expected for them because, I mean, I was one of the people that was surprised they kept it that close with USC. Like, I know it got ugly early, but for them to bounce back and have that being a one-score game at the end, that is major props to them. Hats off to Dion for what he's doing with those guys. But I mean, you look at the schedule the rest of the way. Who do they play? They got Arizona State this week. That's a get right game.
Mm-hmm.
Then you host Stanford. Then you have a bye before going to UCLA, which is going to be a tough game.
Oh yeah.
That's one where it's kind of like who's just outside that top 5, maybe 6 in the Pac-12 right now, with USC, Oregon, Washington, Utah, Oregon State, and now Washington State.
Mm-hmm.
Who's kind of that next one?
Oh yeah.
It's those two teams up for debate right now, so that's going to be a really fun game. Then after that, they host Oregon State. That is a tough game. That's 2 tough games back to back. Before hosting Arizona, going to Washington State, and then to Utah to end the year. So a tough 2-game slide, kind of easy couple games, then tough 2-game slide, then an easy year game, and then a tough 2-game slide. So they'll be right around that 6, 7, maybe 8 wins if one of those extra games goes their way.
Yeah.
But it's right around that bowl eligibility borderline that we said at the beginning of the year. It's just they've looked really impressive in the games outside of Oregon.
Yeah, and the thing about it is, and going back to this one, like we got to give them credit because, like you said, when I saw the score start going up, and all of a sudden it's what 21, and USC is just balling out. I'm like, oh, here we go again. But I got to give it to Colorado. I got to give it to Shedeur Sanders. Those guys never quit. They never quit. Double digits in the second, third, and fourth quarter, to the point where at the end of the game, Alex. I mean, I was thinking, maybe is this Colorado State all over again? Are we gonna see some magic? Because
I was too.
Just like Alex said, that Swiss cheese defense.
Yeah, like we said going into the game, was if they can figure out how to control USC's defensive line, because they don't blitz often, but they get the most pressure with just their down linemen in the nation. They're number 1 at that. So we said going in, if they can control that defensive line or kind of limit that pressure on Shedeur, they're going to have a chance, and they struggled with that early.
Yeah.
But then you could see that offensive line kind of started to get into a rhythm once they started to be able to run the ball a bit more. Then USC couldn't pin their ears back as much. And then Shedeur got comfortable. He got rolling. The receivers had the short catches, long gains. They really went into that catch and run attack, and it really worked for them.
Yeah. And look, at the end of the day, they show me that resilience. They figured out a way to get it done. They kept themselves in this ball game, and if anything, this is definitely going to give them that confidence going forward. We have to remember, Travis didn't play this game.
No, he still didn't play.
Yeah. So we have to remember that this is a top tier offense without their and Colorado didn't have their best guy. So once they get him back, obviously you're gonna still have to get him back up to game speed, but that talent, and his football IQ will have him settle in fairly quickly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So we will just see. Ben said Colorado will end up 7-5 or 6-6 at worst.
Yeah.
It will beat both Arizona teams and Stanford for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So then I guess that goes back to the question I asked before the season, Alex. We did not expect them to have the start that they did. These last 2 games we did expect. If he gets them to a 7-5 or shoot, even maybe potentially 8-4, shock somebody. Do we maybe push for him to get in that Coach of the Year conversation?
Oh, I think he'll absolutely be in that conversation. You make an argument for him to be a finalist.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like the idea of rewarding somebody Coach of the Year for like barely over 500 when you look at it that way. But I mean, when you also look at what the turnover has been from 1-11 to this, and to go essentially almost beat USC, to beat the runner-up from last year's national championship game.
Yes.
To go beat Nebraska. There's some tough game. Well, there's some games that we didn't expect to go their way. That went their way, or just about went their way, that I think could work in his favor. Plus the popularity behind him and everything with that.
That's the other part. They're going to give him a push because it's prime time. You know what I mean? So, yeah. And shout out to him. Good for him. He's got those boys playing, and we're going to see down the line. Let's see what happens, man. See if they can shock the world. Colin says, just goes to show that they don't need all that extra. Just play like they know they can. Leave out the stuff for the cameras. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, we saw what happened when they were talking to smack and stomping on the O at Oregon. A real team took it personal, and we see. What do you say? Cameras have already been there. Right. We don't need all that extra attention. We don't need it.
College Football Update with your host, Sean Spencer and Alex Luceman.